It's time for me to give my predictions and breakdown for every single fight on Tracy Cortez versus Rose Namajunas. This is the first fight card. I mean, this fight card is a disgrace, okay? And let's not bullshit around, okay? We're not excited for this. This is a horrible fight card. There are 3 fights that I want nothing to do with, and I might just skip one of them. And please spare me with the whole, what are you doing, man? You can't skip. I'm going to skip one of these at least. I think you guys know which one it's going to be. It's not going to be the main event, although I'm a little bit tempted to, as soon as that co-main event is over, maybe Drew Dober in the co-main event. I'm tempted to kind of just slip and slide out of there and do my recap video, but, you know, we'll maybe stick around. But let's just be honest. We know what we're getting. We know what this is. Rose Namajunas is the right pick. I don't think anyone is dying and fucking biting their fingers to try to see who I'm going to pick there. So let's just get into these predictions. We'll have some fun with it. We'll get going with this. You know, I've done my research, and we're back. We are back, and lots of good content coming up. So let's get into this. Josh Fremd versus Andre Petroski, the first fight on this card. I'm going to go with Andre Petroski. Him and Josh Fremd are both kind of mediocre. And Andre Petroski, I might be falling into the trap. And that trap is, oh, Andre Petroski is the real hardcore wrestler of the middleweight division. And he's, you know, he looks like a NCAA Division I multi-time champion. But in reality, he's just a bodybuilder, stiff as a board, horrible striking, just extremely mediocre on the feet. He's got a blast double leg takedown. He's got a submission game that was hyped up because he submitted one of Nate Diaz's training partners. Dude was total bum. And ever since then, Andre Petroski was hyped up as, like, you know, the baddest wrestler in this division, which is just hilarious to me. But I'm still picking him over Josh Fremd. Maybe this doesn't look so good on Roman Kopylov, but, you know, Josh Fremd is even worse. Josh Fremd is even worse than Andre Petroski. So the reason why I'm picking Andre Petroski is because I just don't think that Josh Fremd is dangerous on the feet. Neither is Jacob Malkoun, and Jacob Malkoun, sort of the big tubby Kelvin Gastelum version that is actually good. He knocked out Andre Petroski with a gust of wind. I guess it was sort of like an elbow to the temple or maybe a knee to the temple. It was a really weird scramble that they had, and Andre Petroski hit the deck, face planted, got knocked out badly, seemingly with a gust of wind. So his chin is going to be iffy coming off of back-to-back KO losses before he got knocked out by, what's his name, Jacob Malkoun, Big Tubby, the version that's actually good. I actually think Jacob Malkoun's pretty good. It's, you know, I'm not just saying he's like Kelvin Gastelum. He's actually legit. I picked him to win that fight too, and he was doing pretty well. But, like, my point is, Andre Petroski, this card sucks. This card sucks. Andre Petroski, he got knocked out against Michel Pereira as well. But the thing is, Josh Fremd just hasn't shown me any glimmers of anything. You know, we've not seen a single sliver of solid skill on the feet. And for that reason, yes, he submitted Cedric Dumas in Cedric Dumas's UFC debut, and I do believe that he will be able to put up, you know, a bit of a fight on the ground. I just got to go with Andre Petroski as the more proven grappler. Maybe I'm making the same mistake again with Andre Petroski, but I believe that this is Petroski's level to where he can out-grapple people. This is where Petroski can live up to the name of being a good middleweight wrestler against a guy like Josh Fremd. As soon as he takes a bump up to Jacob Malkoun, someone that is actually very good outside of the rankings, I think that's where he loses. But I think against a guy like Josh Fremd, who can only beat the biggest cans, I think that, you know, Andre Petroski will be able to beat someone like that. And also Josh Fremd, his striking is kind of mid. So is Andre Petroski's. I think that both of them are going to be pretty even on the feet. Fremd was able to do all right at moments against Roman Kopylov. I have to hold back laughter while saying that just because of how bad that looks. I say how bad that looks. It's like, you know, Roman Kopylov is fucking piecing him up. But, you know, the point is, Josh Fremd had some success on the feet. But I just think Andre Petroski is going to be able to take him down, coming off of 2K losses, 2K losses, coming off of 2 KO losses, I think he will be able to get this finish. Or not finish. I think he's going to be able to stink it up on the ground for 3 rounds. My bad, guys. We're heating up. First video back in a while. And I'm going with Andre Petroski. Let's get on to the next one. Montel Jackson versus Damon Blackshear. So Damon Blackshear, haven't seen this guy fight since last summer, it seems. I mean, remember, Damon Blackshear was the guy that got a submission by Twister in his first UFC fight. And then he turned around like a week later and was getting a lot of hype because of, you know, the fact that he had, you know, fought back-to-back weeks. We haven't seen anyone do anything like this since Khamzat Chimaev. And he had a very close fight with Mario Batista in that second fight. And I picked Mario Batista to beat him. Mario Batista is actually really good and since has beaten Ricky Simone. So, you know, Damon Blackshear making a fight with a guy like Mario Batista close on the feet and in the grappling exchanges without a real full training camp, you know, having to cut weight back-to-back weeks, that's pretty impressive. But I'm going to go with Montel Jackson in this one just because I think that although Damon Blackshear is going to have the grappling advantage, he is a very strong grappler for the bantamweight division. And again, he was able to make it competitive with Mario Batista, who's also a really good grappler. Montel Jackson has a wrestling background and is decent when it comes to defending takedowns, not really spending a lot of time on the ground if someone does take him down. And I just think that Montel Jackson has a different level of power to the average bantamweight. And if you pair the power that he has in his hands, I think he has the most knockdowns in the bantamweight division, maybe aside from Sean O'Malley. I think it's between him and O'Malley. Fair enough, he fought JP Buys, and that stat's going to be boosted after you fight JP Buys because everyone's able to knock that guy all over the place. But Montel Jackson has a lot of power in his hands, and I think that that's going to be the difference in this fight. Blackshear, a little bit slow on the feet, a little bit awkward on the feet. If Mario Batista can get the better of him in the striking, and Mario Batista's like a volume guy, I think that Montel Jackson, who will have a slight reach advantage in this fight, I think that he's going to be able to land the power shots on the feet, get a couple knockdowns, maybe get himself a finish. So I'm going to go with Montel Jackson by a TKO in this fight. Let's get on to the next one. Jasmine Jasudavicius versus Fatima Kline. Oh, okay. So I guess Jasmine Jasudavicius has a new opponent. She was supposed to fight someone else. I'm going with Jasmine Jasudavicius. I don't know who Fatima Kline is, but Jasmine Jasudavicius I'll pick by ground and pound TKO. She is one of those few WMMA fighters that imposes her will, that actually gets finishes. And I really do believe that Jasmine Jasudavicius, because of her finishing potential, because of her ability to impose her will be able to win this fight. I'm going to pick her. Easy pick. She was like the only Canadian on that Canada card, UFC 297, Sean Strickland versus DDP, the only Canadian on that card to get a win. And I remember her, which means that if you remember a WMMA fighter, that means that they must have had some kind of a out-of-the-norm performance, and out-of-the-norm for WMMA is entertaining finishes. So I'm going to go with Jasmine Jasudavicius to get this one done. Let's get on to the next one. Joshua Van versus Charles Johnson. A lot of people were picking Charles Johnson, I see. And this is the thing about Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson, I picked against him against Azat Maxim, and he won, but I think it should have been a draw because Azat Maxim dropped him twice. I think he warranted a 10-8 round with at least one of those. But, you know, Charles Johnson in his last fight was able to beat Jake Hadley. I think I picked Jake Hadley in that fight. Or no, actually, I picked Charles Johnson in that fight because Jake Hadley lacks an IQ and fought like an NPC robot in that fight as well. The thing is that there's a big difference between Joshua Van and Azat Maxim and Joshua Van and Jake Hadley. First off, Joshua Van has an IQ. He's not an NPC robot on the feet. He's not low output, and he's actually going to take the fight to you and stalk you down the whole time. The difference between Joshua Van and Azat Maxim is Joshua Van has aura. Azat Maxim doesn't. Charles Johnson's one of these guys that the real hardcore fans, you know, this is one of those guys that they'll always consistently pick, and they'll talk about him in prediction videos. Like, man, Charles Johnson, I think I'll go with Charles Johnson in this one. Obviously, going with Charles Johnson. Man, I'm going to go with Charles Johnson, man. No. He's not that good. Charles Johnson is, I swear, he's like an NPC, dude. Listen, he's all right. He's all right. But I swear that this is one of those guys, he's just I don't even know how to fucking describe it, man. Charles Johnson is one of those guys that's, you know, he's like meant to fucking upset your prospect picks. Like, that's what this guy does. He's meant to be the guy that goes in there and beats the up-and-coming prospects that you pick to beat him, but you don't really care about that much because they're not exciting prospects, but you're just like, fuck, dude, this guy. Charles Johnson ain't that good. He's fucking mediocre, and people hype him up to be like one of the best, one of the old standbys, old staples of the flyweight division. He's got like 6 fights in the UFC. They talk about him like he's Robbie Lawler, veteran status, Unk status. Charles Johnson, they talk about this guy like he's Unk status. Charles Johnson is not beating Joshua Van. I'm sorry. I know he's got an ability to shoot a takedown. Again, he's one of these guys that's just, he's got the perfect fucking skill set to upset your prospect. So it's like, if things aren't going well on the feet, and that's where Charles Johnson usually does his best work, it's like he's got the takedowns in his arsenal. I don't care. Joshua Van has good takedown defense. He does. Joshua Van has stuffed takedowns, basically every one thrown in his direction in the UFC, and I was excited to see how it would hold up against Tagir Ulanbekov. But the thing is, this ain't Tagir Ulanbekov, and I'm not worried. Charles Johnson is not a finisher on the ground. Charles Johnson doesn't have a bread-and-butter wrestling game that he relies on. He's got the ability to mix it up, but sorry, man. I know he's going to be bigger because Joshua Van is like the smallest flyweight, and that is the one thing that you always have to worry about, that he's going to get sort of out-muscled, and he's always going to have a disadvantage in strength and physicality. That's definitely going to be apparent in this fight. Again, Joshua Van, I believe he's only like 21, 22 years old, so he's got a lot of time to kind of build into this flyweight division. But other than the size discrepancy, he's better on the feet. Like, yeah, he's a slow starter. Yeah, he got dropped by a nobody in that fight at Madison Square Garden before he set a record for like the most body shots ever landed in the bantamweight division. But I just think that Charles Johnson, if he doesn't finish Joshua Van's going to heat up and march forward, and there's going to be a difference between him and fucking Jake Hadley and Azat Maxim. Let's not get this twisted. Charles Johnson won those fights. He didn't dominate those fights. And those guys, Azat Maxim just doesn't have the striking arsenal, doesn't have the volume, doesn't have the ferocity, doesn't have the forward pressure, doesn't have the cardio, doesn't have the takedown defense. He has okay takedown defense, actually, but just like, Azat Maxim's literally like fucking grappler, bro. But listen, Jake Hadley fought like a freaking NPC that lost his batteries, okay? And Charles Johnson didn't freaking dog walk him. You got to be freaking finishing people. You got to be dog walking people. You have to be ranked. You're not. I'm sorry. I know the hardcore fans are going to be, dude, all over Charles Johnson with this one. This is the guy to upset everyone. Joshua Van is a cut above the prospect that gets beat by a Charles Johnson. Wait until Joshua Van fights someone like a Brandon Moreno, or wait until he fights, I don't know, a Kai Kara France, to where he gets outclassed, or maybe Amir Albazi. Wait until he fights someone like that, and then I think he's going to get beat. Tagir Ulanbekov, but not Charles Johnson. He's going to beat Charles Johnson. I'm going to go with Joshua Van by a decision. I think it's going to be a really rough first round for him just because he's a slow starter. But I think that as this fight progresses, Joshua Van's going to heat up. He's going to do really well. And we're seeing a bit of a shift in the flyweight division. The newcomers at flyweight, since the sport is growing right now and the flyweight division is booming, they're all learning rapidly and improving rapidly. And I think Charles Johnson kind of represents the old guard. You know, he's like 31, he's like 30. Being 30, 31 in the flyweight division is the equivalent to being like 35 at lightweight. You know what I mean? So Joshua Van's getting this one done by decision. Let's get on to the next one. Cody Brundage is back, and he's fighting Abdul Razak Alhassan. You know what? I'm going to go with Cody the Bum Brundage on this one. No. I'm going to go with Abdul Razak Alhassan. I'm sorry I'm not taking this prediction video as serious as I would the past ones, but that's just because we're just having fun with this one, man. We're just having fun. We're just talking about this card, and we're flowing with this card, all right? So I'm going to go with Abdul Razak Alhassan. Abdul Razak Alhassan was in there with Joe Pyfer, and he was starting to do some work against Joe Pyfer. And you know what? There were moments where Joe Pyfer even landed right through the guard of Abdul Razak Alhassan and landed flush on the chin and wasn't able to knock him out, wasn't able to rock him that badly. And I don't even think Cody Brundage is skilled enough to be able to land any shot that clean. And I think that Abdul Razak Alhassan, although he's a little bit low output, he seems to be an even tougher out than Cody Brundage. This is the tough out battle. They're both... Cody Brundage is not really a tough out. Abdul Razak Alhassan is at least good enough to be a tough out. You know what I mean? If you're decent and you're a prospect and you've got a lot of hype, you're going to have to work for a finish over Abdul. All right? You're going to have to really work for it. I don't think Cody Brundage is even a tough out. I think Brundage is a guy that gets finished and easily out-grappled by a Cedric Dumas. So I'm going with Alhassan. I think he's got better grappling. He's got a background in judo. He's a black belt in judo. He's got decent takedown defense. He's got strong low kicks. And I just think his striking game is just a cut above that of Cody Brundage, who has only really shown us one thing in his career that was impressive, and that was a big, ugly overhand against I forget who, and he knocked him out with it. But, like, you know, Cody Brundage has one moment of success in his career. Abdul Razak Alhassan, you know, that head kick KO over Chirico a while ago and being a tough out in front of Joe Pyfer. I know we're rating this guy for being a tough out, but, like, that's really what it comes down to. Cody Brundage is a can. Abdul Razak Alhassan is a tough out. Bit of a difference. I'm going with the tough out in this one. Let's get on to the next one. Christian Rodriguez versus Julian Erosa. I'm going with Christian Rodriguez. This is an easy fight to pick. I know Julian Erosa finished Ricardo Ramos in his last fight, but Ricardo Ramos didn't have a brain that night, had no IQ, fought like an absolute fool, and I'll explain why. He basically rocked Julian Erosa as soon as the fight started, as a lot of people do. Julian Erosa was coming off of, like, back-to-back KO losses going into that fight. So he gets rocked badly, and Ricardo Ramos decides to shoot and grapple for the rest of the round. Doesn't even try to strike with Julian Erosa after badly rocking him, almost TKOing him. And eventually just kind of dunks himself into a guillotine. Like a damn fool. Christian Rodriguez is not going to dunk himself into a guillotine. Christian Rodriguez, despite getting out-grappled by Isaac Dolgarian and kind of being beat up and, you know, sort of muscled around the octagon. I don't know how he won that fight. I think that was a robbery. But the fact is, he was able to survive with Isaac Dolgarian, who has good ground and pound, who has a finishing ability on the ground. Julian Erosa, he's one of these reactionary grapplers that's able to snatch you up in a bad position. But Christian Rodriguez, his gas tank is insane. All right, his situational awareness is pretty good on the ground. And he's a really tough out early on. And his game is basically survive, make you blow your steam off, and then come on strong in the later half of the fight while you've already sort of gassed yourself out. He's a survivor early on. That's what he does. He survives, and then he starts to turn up the heat, and he starts to impose his will as the fight progresses. So I think that it's going to be a typical Christian Rodriguez fight. I think that Julian Erosa, with his awkward, slow man's, wiry man striking, he's not that fast on the feet. He's not that dangerous. He easily gets rocked around. I think that Christian Rodriguez is tough to put away, and I think that I just don't see Julian Erosa having the finishing ability on the feet to be able to hurt him early. I just think it's going to be a typical Christian Rodriguez move forward, you know, get Julian Erosa to show his cards, get Julian Erosa to throw until he gets tired, grapple until he gets tired, and then the second and third round, Christian Rodriguez is going to be able to turn up the pace and start offensively grappling and offensively striking, and I think he's going to win himself a pretty dominant decision second and third round. That's his game. You got to respect it from Christian Rodriguez. And Julian Erosa, I think he's going to get beat. So let's get on to the next one. Gabriel Bonfim versus Ange Loosa. Ange Loosa is the toughest out that there ever was in the welterweight division. He's the epitome of a tough out. His whole thing, his whole hype is based on a fight that he had with Jack Della Maddalena, and everyone talks about how tough he is. Man, Ange Loosa has the best chin in UFC history. Holy shit. We're hyping this guy up for being a tough out. Ange Loosa, let's be honest, you know, he's not really someone that takes the fight to anyone and imposes his will, to be honest. Like, he beat AJ Fletcher by decision, okay? He beat Reese McKee by a decision. That's Reese McKee that we're talking about, man. All right? Reese McKee is Khamzat Chimaev's, you know, that's Khamzat Chimaev's victim right there, Reese McKee. Reese McKee has freaking lost left and right. This guy got beat by Munir Lazez. Okay, so what I'm basically saying is Ange Loosa is one of these guys, tough out, super durable, decent power, stocky build, all right, decent takedown defense. if you're an NPC, you're going to have a tough time with this guy because he's just going to outwork you based on his settings. His settings are, his volume is going to be tipped up at the 70% level. His toughness is going to be like a 95. All right. His leg kicks, his punches got a ton of thud on them. And I just think that if you're out here freaking mobilized on the feet at range and you have no ability to impose your will, Ange is just going to do that much more than you, and he's not going to get finished, so he's going to win a decision. Gabriel Bonfim is a finisher and imposes his will like a madman. And even though he lost to Nicolas Dalby, and people think of that as like a fraud check, and I think it is a fraud check because, again, Bonfim was hyped up to win that fight, and he was hyped up as one of the best prospects in the UFC, and there was a lot of hype behind him and his brother. I think it was a fraud check, but Nicolas Dalby just had a razor-close fight with Rinat Fakhretdinov, who's the boogeyman. Who's the boogeyman who Kevin Lee lost to, and everyone's like, whoa, this guy beat Kevin Lee. And, he's kind of overrated too, but, listen. If you're having a razor-close fight with Rinat Fakhretdinov and you're beating Gabriel Bonfim, you're pretty good. Nicolas Dalby is very good. And he's impressive. He's got like a Merab Davalishvili gas tank, and he's very fast twitch on the feet. He marches people down. He imposes their will. Gabriel Bonfim tried to finish him, all right, took him down on multiple occasions, had him in bad positions, was beating him up. I mean, he was taking down Nicolas Dalby with ease, and he just gassed out. And the thing is, if you gas out in front of Nicolas Dalby, if you slow down, he's going to make you pay. I just don't see Ange Loosa putting up a bit of same sort of adversity. I don't see Ange Loosa actually making him work. I think that if Ange Loosa gets taken down, he's going to be here half asleep, tired, letting pit-pat shots when Gabriel Bonfim is holding him down inside control. And I just think that even if Gabriel Bonfim pushes the pace and doesn't finish Ange Loosa, Loosa's not going to capitalize off of it. He's just not. And the thing is, Gabriel Bonfim also has a serious height advantage. He's got imposing his will advantage, and he has pretty good boxing. He is hittable on the feet, but I think that he'll be able to put together some long form combinations with straight punches, and I think he'll be able to rock Ange Loosa, hurt him, which is going to open up opportunities to take him down. And I think he's either going to submit Ange Loosa in the first round. Maybe he rocks Ange Loosa and has Loosa shoot a takedown on him, and maybe he can latch him up with a submission, or take him down and just beat the shit out of him and finish him on the ground in the first, or maybe just TKO him up against the fence. I think that, listen, I know Loosa's tough, but I could see him getting rocked. I think Bonfim's going to come out of the gate super fast. I just see him getting finished. I think he's going to be a sit and duck. He's going to lose this fight by the sin of being a sitting duck. Okay? So Bonfim wins this fight via imposing his will, and Loosa loses via just not being able to turn up the heat. On to the next one, Drew Dober versus Jean Silva. Almost had Dober versus Mike Davis. This is like the third opponent Dober has had in the last week. I know we would have seen a motivated Dober against Mike Davis. I don't know how motivated he's going to be this time, but either way, I'm going with Jean Silva. Initially, I was going to pick Drew Dober just because of the experience, because he's more proven in scrappy battles against other stocky strikers. But he's 35. He's taken a ton of damage in his career, and I think he's starting to slow down a little bit. Yes, Moicano beat him via the grappling. It wasn't the striking, and Moicano really didn't have any success on the feet. But I just see Dober, I don't know. I don't think he's as slick as he used to be. I think he's a little bit stiffer. I think he's a little bit, I don't know how to describe it, but he's just freaking spamming big ugly 1-2s down the pipe these days. And I think that Jean Silva's actually really slick with his striking. I think that Jean Silva's defense and head movement is really good. And not only that, but Jean Silva seems to fight without a care in the world, but he's also defensively sound. So what I mean is, like, he's loose on the feet. He's very comfortable on the feet, and I think that allows him to slip out of the way of shots and counter effortlessly. Whereas Dober's kind of boxed in, Dober's kind of boxed in, and he's chucking big 1-2s, and he's moving back, and chucking big 1-2s, and he's moving back. He's throwing a calf kick. Jean Silva's going to be missing, getting out of the way of shots. He was slipping out of the way of Charles Jourdain's head kicks. And he was right back in his face. He was emoting on him. He was like even clapping for him when he would miss a head kick. He seemed very comfortable in that fight, and the only success that Jourdain had was with body kicks. But Jean Silva dropped him in the first round, knocked him out in the second. I know Charles Jourdain doesn't have any power, and Jean Silva doesn't really have to fear anything coming back in his direction, but Jourdain does have a good chin, and he hasn't been finished like that in the UFC before. I don't think anyone else has knocked him out. For Jean Silva to knock out a skilled, striking, slick featherweight that has a good chin, I think he will be able to knock out Drew Dober. I know Dober has a good chin, but it's not as good as it used to be, right? He got finished by Frivola, got dropped badly by Terrence McKinney, and he's taken a lot of damage throughout his career. I think there's going to be a bit of a featherweight skill thing on display. I think the featherweight skill of Jean Silva, the slickness on the feet, the flowing striking state that he can get into where he starts to emote and get confident, and I think he's just going to be a little bit slicker when it comes to the defense. He's going to be a little bit slicker when it comes to the defense, and I think he's going to have a masterclass against Dober. I think Jean Silva is going to have a bit of a masterclass, honestly. I could eat my words. This could be a really bad prediction. I can see it from a mile away. I honestly do. I think that Drew Dober, I think in his prime, it would be a bit of a different sort of fight, but yeah, he's crafty, but he's 155 pounds. And we talk about 155 as one of the marquee divisions, and it absolutely is. But he's also a little bit stiff compared to one of these featherweights. And I think that Jean Silva, the way he looked against Charles Jourdain, who's a tricky striker to deal with, okay, who's very fast, who has good footwork himself, Jean Silva looked super comfortable in there. You know, he's not just throwing the same thing over and over and over again. And I think that Dober's sort of rhythm, the way he strikes, is very predictable these days. So I think Jean Silva, the wild man that he is, but also kind of defensive in his own right, I think that he's like the perfect answer to a Drew Dober on short notice, okay? I am a little bit worried about the back-to-back weight cuts, but this is at 155 pounds, so it's not like he's moving back down to 145. Jean Silva wins this via TKO with featherweight skill, okay? So I'm picking Jean Silva. On to the next one, Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Muslim Salikhov. Two crafty vets. I'm going with Santiago Ponzinibbio. Santiago Ponzinibbio kind of cobbles around and wobbles around and honestly looks like he needs a cane. I remember this guy was listed at like 6'10", 6'5" back in the day. I always found that funny because, you know, he'd get in the cage and he'd be getting dwarfed by someone that was 5'8". Santiago Ponzinibbio is the missing link in terms of height. No one really knows how tall he is. You know, his height goes up every single time you see him with the tail of the tape, but he gets shorter in the cage. So Santiago Ponzinibbio, old man, sort of, he's got the hunchback of Notre Dame, cobbly and wobbly. I don't even know how this guy is still competitive with decent fighters in their prime. He's still sleeping guys. Like, he was able to sleep Miguel Baeza, but, you know, Miguel Baeza is a bit of a disgrace if you take into account the fact that he got beat by Pinelli Soriano so easily, out-grappled. I can't believe how bad he looked in that fight. But Miguel Baeza used to be decent on the feet. So Santiago Ponzinibbio knocking him out. He's one of these old men that still has a little bit of that extra pop. That still got some pepper, right? And he can still freaking knock you out later rounds. But then you got Muslim Salikhov. Muslim Salikhov is one of those old guys walking around, waltzing around the gym. Sort of doesn't know where he is at times. Doesn't know where he is at times. You know, you pat him on the back, he gets startled. But he still has, like, insane ability to chuck out, like, a freaking nasty flying scissor kick. Or, you know, he's got the wheel kicks. He's the king of kung fu. So we've got old wobbly cobbly Santiago Ponzinibbio, and we've got Master Shifu Muslim Salikhov, who's, you know, Muslim Salikhov is weirdly durable. You know what I mean? He's one of these guys, he probably feels like a fucking chimp. Dude, Muslim Salikhov is like a freaking, he's like a freaking, he's got the freaking chimp build, all right? But he's got a human chin, and that's the issue. He's been getting knocked out recently. This is such a bad breakdown. This is such a shit breakdown, but it's like, come on, we got to know what this fight is. Okay, so it's the Kung Fu Muslim Salikhov versus the old crafty basics of Santiago Ponzinibbio. Back in the day, Santiago Ponzinibbio used to be a monster. This guy was on like a 10-fight win streak. He was finishing everyone. He was a freaking terrifying force. And he was the boogeyman. And then he got sick, and it was really unfortunate because he was doing so well, and everyone was like, shit, dude, one of the best contenders is no longer around. Came back, now he's crafty. Do I trust Muslim Salikhov's spinning mule kick at 100 miles per hour that's going to shock everyone, given that he's an old man? Or am I going to trust Santiago Ponzinibbio's old, crafty, easy to look past, decent defense that surprises you? You kind of scratch your head wondering, how has this guy not been KO'd 50 times in a row? He's so slow. He's so tiny in the cage. He's wobbling around. Like, how has he not been finished? Again, one of those guys where you're just like, how the fuck is this guy still around? I'm going to go with Santiago Ponzinibbio. He's got that weird power at this point in time. He still has that weird power, weird KO power. And I think he's going to be able to land a big shot on Muslim Salikhov. And I just, listen, Muslim Salikhov has really dangerous spinning back kicks, and he's dynamic, and he's fast in his own right. But Santiago still has a decent chin, still is pretty tough. And I think he has a better style for a decision win. I think he's got more output. I think he's got the basics. And he just has an ability to frustrate people and kind of drag them into this weird, ugly, basic fight where everyone's just chucking 1-2s and leg kicks. You can't really have like a fancy performance against this guy. You can't really do anything flashy against this guy. He shuts it down because of how crafty he is. Muslim Salikhov is crafty, though, and he does have the flashy kickboxing and kung fu, taekwondo. So maybe he'll be able to pull it off. But I'm going to trust in Santiago Ponzinibbio. He's just had a little bit more success as of recent. I know he got KO'd against Kevin Holland, but he was doing pretty well in that fight. So I'm going to pick him to win that. On to the next one. Rose Namajunas versus Tracy Cortez. I don't even know how Tracy Cortez fights. I can't tell you what her style is. I don't know. Is she a kickboxer? Is she a grappler? Or is she your typical, kickboxing and clinch him up, take him down whenever that you normally see? Like, who knows what her style is? I know Rose Namajunas. I know what her style is. She's got good boxing. She's got good kickboxing. Former world champ. She's got good grappling. All right, she was able to out-grapple Zhang Weili. She was able to knock Zhang Weili out. I mean, you're out of your fucking mind if you're picking Tracy Cortez to win this fight. I think Rose Namajunas finishes Tracy Cortez. I think she's going to dominate this fight, and I think she's going to dog-walk Tracy Cortez, honestly. I think she's going to get the easy finish. So I'm going to go with Rose Namajunas to get this one done by a ground-and-pound crucifix TKO. I just imagine that. Ground-and-pound crucifix. It's going to be so easy to keep down Tracy Cortez. You have to pick Rose Namajunas. I mean, when I say you have to, you don't have to, but, you get my point. How could you go against her in this matchup? This is an enormous step down in competition. Cortez is going to get... I was about to say she was going to get this one. Rose Namajunas is going to get this win. Hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown and predictions. What do you guys think in the comments? Who do you have in that crafty co-main event? I wish we had another big fight on this card. Not a lot of fights on this card, so this one should go by pretty quickly. Looking forward to it, though. I wish the Colorado fans had a better card, but I guess they don't. It is what it is. Next week, we have an even worse card, and I don't know if I'm even going to break down that main event, but I hope you guys enjoyed. Until next time.